add the tests, and I commit that. And then I make sure everything's working happily. And then with both of those commits, I want to bring that and I want to merge it into Dylan's stuff.
Yeah.
So that would be a branch. And once the branch is done, we can put it back into main and connect it back into a single flow.
Shall I add something else to that, the branches? Has anyone played football? Like in a club? Yeah, club football? Alright, well, when you're playing soccer, right, for a team, you're usually in a competition, right? And so in your competition, you know, your top 4 go to semis or whatever, and you basically have different matches, and then the results of those matches determine who goes into semis, right? But it would be really impractical if we had a single football field, right, where every single team, we had to do all of our matches on that one field, right, and then finally decide who the winners are going to be. And so a better way of doing this, right, is often we have multiple football fields. So you go to a soccer grounds, you see there's different football fields there, and then you play your games, and then what you wind up with at the end is the results of those games combined, right, determine who those top 4 people are going to the semi-finals. So, you know, another way, just expanding on what Oliver said, if you want to think of it in a visual way, is a branch is kind of like a different football field. You're going to do some work, so the 2 teams are going to come there, they're going to play a game, there's going to be a result, and then that's going to be merged back into the draw for the competition. Does that make sense? If you want a visual way to think about it.
And we'll show you a visualization in a little bit too that'll clarify it more. Are we happy to continue? Okay, so we're going to go through some commands here, and I'm going to get some revision here as well. So I'm going to ask you guys for some help for some parts that we've already gone over. So to start with, I want to go make a feature. Let's say my feature is I'm going to make a new section in REB. So what I do here is I go and I want to create a new branch to do my work. So in this case, I'm going to call it a feature, and I'm going to say I'm going to add a how to run section inside of REB. So I'm going to call the branch how to run, and I'm going to create it on GitHub. You'll see there it is. That's my new branch, and now I actually want to do something with that branch on my local computer. I want to make changes to it, right? So what do I do? How do I get updates from GitHub to my local machine? Pull works. What was the first one I did? Fetch. So pull is a fetch and then a merge, whereas we just want to fetch here. Because all we care about is getting that new branch. So if I do a git fetch, you'll see there's a new branch. You guys see that? And if I go and I type the command git branch, GitHub actually tells me what branches exist. What? There's only main. Git branch on its own only shows you what branches you have on your local machine. But actually, I want to see all branches because there's some branches that are on GitHub itself that I haven't got yet. So that's what -a does. It tells me all. And in this case, you'll see on GitHub we have this branch. And that's the one I want to work with, right? So to start working with it, we've got to check out that branch. Now, don't worry too much about the terminology. Just sort of, for this little part with checkout and things like that, follow along just with the commands and you'll get an intuitive understanding of how it works. So I want to check out which branch. I want to check out the origin version of how to run. And I want to make a branch on my local machine. So I do a -b here, and I want to call it how to run. So there's a complicated command. Let's get some idea of what it means. Check out means I want to check out some code. It's kind of like cloning, but you do this one after you've gotten the initial clone. And we want to check out the branch that we made on GitHub, and then we want to create a local branch with the -b flag here, and we want to call it the same thing without the origin in front of it. So you say we've created a branch here, and it's tracking that branch that we created in GitHub. And so now, if I clear out and I check git branch, you'll see we do have a branch here, right? And if I do git branch -a, you can see there's still a branch here, and there's still one on GitHub. That's because it's the same thing that we had before, where we had the main locally and the origin main on GitHub. There's a branch on GitHub that we want to share between both of us, and then I have a branch locally just for my changes as I'm working. And we're going to have to realign them with Git pushing in a little bit. But it's a good separation. Everyone clear on the separation? Makes sense? Okay, cool. And we can also do a git status, and it'll say that we're on this local branch how to run, and that it's tracking on the GitHub version of our branch, and that we're up to date. And similarly, we can check git log, and you'll see all of the various branches. And interestingly enough, right now, the new branch we made is exactly the same as far as commits are concerned as main and origin main and all of those ones, right? Because they're still on the same commit. But we're going to change that right now. So I said we wanted to add a new section in here on how to run. And so there we go. We've added a how to run section. It's very helpful. And now I want to share that up onto GitHub, right? So somebody help me out here. How do I check, or how do I share my stuff, my changes with Dylan? What's the first thing that we should do?
Adding commit.
Sure. What's something we should do even before that? Git status. So some people just want to get straight to Git adding. I'm actually not a fan of that. Because Git is our source of truth, and we don't want to make a mistake with Git. I'm sure you guys all know the famous line, let's not get there, right? So instead, let's take care when we do make Git commits, because why get into the bad situation in the first place? So you can see, as we had before, we've got a modified file, and it's red because it's not staged yet. Before we even get to git add though, I want to show you one more command. Git diff. So what is git diff? It says, with the things we've changed so far, how does that compare to what is in GitHub right now? More precisely, it's actually what's changed since the previous commit, and the previous commit might not be on GitHub yet, but in our case, it is just comparing what's on our local versus what's on GitHub. So what's changed? Well, we've added a new section, right? That's it. And that's kind of a bad view. So how do I see that same view in VS Code, for example? You can actually go to this tab here, and then you can click on the file. And this is a lot easier to see, right? We can see precisely what we've changed. Good so far? Okay, now help me out here. I'm ready to do some committing. What do I do first? How do I stage my changes?
I think that went around the room. Probably said it.
Okay, added the already.
Git add.
So we want to git add, right? So to commit, we first got to stage our changes, and that's what git add does. So here we go. We've got green. That now means that we've staged our change. So what do we do next? How do I bundle up my changes?
Commit.
Commit, right? And so what message should I give this, do you think? What did I change?
Remade.
I added a new section, so added how to, we'll just leave it like that. How to, great, so I've added that commit. Now, how do I check the commits again? What command do I do to check the commits? I want to see the history of the commits.
Git log.
Git log, okay. So let's look. Does this make sense to us? What is it telling me? Somebody tell me what it's saying.
It's not that, like,
What do you mean? Yeah, you're right, but what do you mean?
like, it's not recognizing the commit that you just action. It's alright.
What do you mean by recognizing? In what sense?
Oh, it's like, oh wait, never mind. Sorry.
No, but I mean, there's something there. There is. If we go to GitHub right now, so if I go to code and I change my branch to the branch I'm working on, right? That change I made is not there, right? There's no how-to section. Why is that? Because what I'm looking at GitHub is not my local how to run branch. It's the origin one, right? And you can see here that git log is saying that the origin branch is on Dylan's commit, it's not on my commit. Yeah? Okay, so how do we make the origin version of our branch up to date with what we've done locally? Push. Push, that's exactly right. So you can just write git push But like I said before, I actually believe in being quite precise with Git. So you don't want to make any mistakes. So how do we precisely say what we want to do? We can actually specify the branch. So here we're really specifically saying we want to push to the origin version of how to run, right? And it's exactly the same as doing git push in this specific scenario. They are identical, but there are other scenarios where they're not identical, so I like to be precise. And now, while we're looking at this how to run branch, you'll notice that here it is. But if I go to main, my change isn't there. And so, as we work, I'll make my changes on my own branch, I'll push them up to my GitHub version of my branch, but then I want to do something called a pull request to merge my change in my branch into the main branch, okay? And we add this extra step because when you're working on this project, you guys all want to be aware of the changes you're making. So you want to review each other's code. And this is the best way to review code. So in particular, it's quite easy. You go to this pull request tab, and we create a new pull request, and we want to say, where do we want to merge it into? So this is where we're going to merge it to. This is where we're merging from. In this case, I want to merge it from that branch I just created, right? And I create my pull request, and there's a lot of stuff here. There's a title, a comment, and you should actually add some details into this. And then you can also add who you want to review. So in this case, I want Dylan to read this code, and I want him to review it, right? And so I create this pull request, and we can go through, and you can see what's on this pull request. Well, it's actually got the commits that I've added. In this case, I only had one commit that I've changed, but potentially you want to have 3 or 4 commits in a single branch. And so this could have many things. Not only that, there's a really good Git diff here on GitHub. And I highly recommend to look through this when your friends ask you to review, right? So as Dylan goes through, he's going to say what's changed, this is what's changed, and he's going to make comments. So he's going to be like, use title case. That's not great. And so he'll make a comment here, and then maybe he'll say request changes. I can't do that to my own one, but this is how you do reviews, right? You request changes or you approve the review. Maybe Dylan will show you properly in a second, but
Yeah.
before we merge this stuff in, we're going to take a little pause, and Dylan's going to simultaneously make a branch off of main. And we're going to show you a bit of a common problem that you'll come across.
Awesome. So, yeah, just to recap all of that. So we learnt about branches from Oliver's segment right there. And so branches are really great for when you, one sec. I'll show you my little code review as well. So code reviews are great for basically making sure that anything that you are going to take from your feature branches into main is all good, right? And so this is a very typical workflow where for every single feature you're working on, you'll have a different branch. So say for example, you're building a social media site, whoever's working on login, registration, is going to have their own branch for doing that, or maybe 2 separate branches for each of those things. And the idea is that you keep your main branch as what your production code is, right? So what your final project is, all your clean code, all your good code that's been tested, and that you're very comfortable with users using, stays on your main branch, right? Any of the crappy stuff can be in features, and then you get people, like in this case, me reviewing Oliver's code or a code reviewer to check that everything's okay. So in my case, if I go to the pull request in GitHub, so I go to the pull request, I click on this, and I go to files change, I can actually see this, and hitting plus will allow me to make a comment. So here I've said this is pretty not nice. I think I meant to say this is not nice, but
We need to review the comments.
So reviewing for the comments is to be discussed.
Anyway.
But anyways, so you can see that I can basically make comments here. So just a quick note on that. So now let's say we're working on this simultaneously, and so let's say that I'm a little quicker to do my changes. Perhaps I'm working on something that is not as big as what Oliver's doing. Maybe I'm changing the color of a button, and Oliver is actually building a whole feature, right? And so I'll wind up with this situation. So I'm going to make a branch. Sure. Okay, sure. Good idea. Alright, no worries. So I'm going to make a branch for my change. So I'm going to go into View, All Branches. And I'm going to hit New Branch, New Branch. So this is a new feature, right? And this is going to be, instead of how to run, I might make it, you know, how to, what's another feature for how to run? Installation, that's also how to run. Let's say usage. Alright, I'll just call it usage. I've got a new feature, that's the main point here. I'm not really particularly concerned with what the name is. And it's based off the main branch. Now, what is Oliver's feature, how to run? What branch is that also based off?
What do we base our changes off?
So I'm creating a branch based off main. Oliver's branch is based off what?
That is the
That's the
branch.
name. But what
was
is it
the
based
original
on?
branch that we diverged from? Well, there's only one other branch, so you can probably guess quite easily.
Main.
Main, right? So I'm creating a branch based off main. He's creating a branch based off main. And this actually makes a lot of sense, right? We're going to add something into our main product, right? We want to make sure that we've still got changes from the main product being tracked, right? So I'm going to call it feature usage, right? So I'm going to create a new branch. Awesome. And so now, if I go into my demo project, so my current branch right now, with respect to everything else there, actually, I need to do, anyone want to guess what command I need to do right now? So I've made some changes, and also Oliver's actually created a new branch, but none of this exists on my machine. So yeah, none of this exists on my machine. So when we have changes that are on GitHub that aren't on our machine, whether that's a new code change or a new branch is being created, what command do we want to run to get those changes?
Fetch or pull.
Pull, right? A pull is a fetch and another command called a git merge. So just use git pull because it's nice and convenient, but you probably don't need to worry about using the others for the moment. So I'm going to do a git pull, right? Pull. Alright, and specifically, I'm going to do it from origin, main. We good? I'll just do a git pull.
So precisely, we do git pull when we want to get code changes. So when we want new commits that aren't in our current branch.
Yeah.
Git fetch is really good for collecting all the changes without immediately merging them into our branch. So in this case, what does Dylan want here? Why is he even pulling stuff down? He wants to see that new branch he created, right? That new branch doesn't have code changes he wants to pull into his branch, because he's starting a new branch, right? So in that case, git fetch makes more sense, because we're not committing anything, we're not merging anything into our things.
Oh yeah, and just to clarify, do not do what I was planning on doing, which is this, because it's only going to pull your changes from origin main.
And
So
that's great.
that's naughty on
When you
my
want to merge, so let's say Dylan had made a change to main, and I wanted to pull his main changes into my branch, then it makes perfect sense to do git pull origin main, because we like to be precise with what we're pulling. But in this case, Dylan didn't actually want any new changes, he just wanted to get the updated branches. So git fetch makes more sense. Does that make sense?
Cool. So we've got our new branches here. So if I actually run git branch -a now, so you can see I've got origin feature how to run. This is Oliver's branch, and I can also see that I've got origin feature usage, which is the new branch that I created on GitHub. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do git checkout. So this is where I want to basically put some code that I'm about to make, any changes into a new branch. And specifically, I basically want this to be feature usage, right? This is my branch, this is my feature, this is where I want to stick all of the changes that I'm planning on making. And locally on my machine, so -b creates a new branch on your machine, based on like tracking changes from origin feature slash usage. So I'm going to call it feature slash usage. Cool. So now you can see this, and now if I do git branch, you can see I'm on the local version of feature slash usage. And so if I go back into VS Code, sorry, this one. Awesome. So you can also see on our Git graph here, we've had some developments. So we can see that Oliver inside of origin feature how to run has made a commit. And you know the how to readme was there. So this is where our graph is at right now. It's a linear state. And so this is going to change when we do a pull request soon. But let's say I'm working on a feature that is a lot quicker to develop than what Oliver's doing. So Oliver had, was it hashtag how to?
Yeah, just call it as usage.
Alright, brilliant. I'll call it usage. And so I'll say this is how you install. Right?
That's nicer.
It's a lot nicer. Not as mean.
And it turns out Dylan doesn't like capitalization. So can you also go back?
Oh yeah. No worries.
And Dylan, he thinks syntax should be all lowercase.
Yeah.
So he's also going to change syntax to be all lowercase.
That's right. Awesome. So really important here. I've made a change in the same place that Oliver also modified.
What a nightmare.
Right? It's about to be a nightmare. It's about to be your worst nightmare.
Well, take a pause for a second and just consider, what can Git even do, right? I've made a change to the exact same file in the exact same place that Dylan has, right? That's a challenging problem, right? And so we're about to go into how to deal with this, and you will actually face this more than likely in your project this weekend. So this is probably, when people talk about Git and having challenges with Git, this is the scenario where they challenge the most, okay? So we're going to show you an easy way to deal with it.
No worries. So, okay, awesome. So, so we've got our changes here. So if I actually go here and I do git status, you can see I've changed it. So let's do our workflow. So we're going to add this. We're going to do add usage information.
Now where is he going to push it?
Am I going to do this, or am I going to do? Am I going to do one of these ones?
Well, what branch would we push it to right now?
Am I going to do?
To usage.
To the GitHub usage, right? To origin feature slash usage. Exactly.
Awesome. So
Go ahead.
we're going to wait.
You're going to have a space there between the origin and the feature. So
Ah,
go
yes,
back to
yeah,
the
yeah.
Awesome. Now, oftentimes you run into command issues with GitHub. ChatGPT is actually fantastic for GitHub issues or Git issues in general. So if you do run into an issue on the weekend and you can't contact us through Discord for whatever reason, I would recommend ChatGPT. It's actually just great. So do it.
So if I go into the repo, you can see here, if I go into featured usage, the changes that I made are here. So you can see syntax in lowercase and usage. This is how you install it.
So what's the process here? Dylan's made changes in his branch. How do we want to get those changes into our main branch?
Merge.
Well, merge, but what's our process here that we've been trying to go through? We've been making a pull request, right? So Dylan's now going to make a pull request, and he's going to get me to review his code. Because we don't want to just make changes willy-nilly, right?
So I'm going to create a PR. PR is short for pull request. And so I've made some changes.
So I'll get my review.
And they're superior, so they're not going to get reviewed. Don't do this, maybe. But
So by standard, he'd put me as a reviewer. I would look at the code, and once I'm happy with it, then it'll merge in, right? But for the sake of demonstration, Dylan's just going to merge those changes immediately into our main branch.
so, like, I'm not a very good junior dev, basically. And so what I'm going to do is, instead of assigning a reviewer, I'm going to just straight away merge what I've got in feature slash usage into main. So I hit this button, I merge it. And now, if we actually take a look at the main branch, we've got our first change. So I'm on branch main. You can see this is a project for SyncHack. This is how you install. And if I actually go into viewing the Git graph, see how we've detoured? We've had a bit of a segue, right? So this segue is basically representing all of the work you did on a different branch that you've then brought back into your main branch.
Right, so in this case, Dylan's branch has sort of taken the main trunk of the tree. Right, he's on the straight line. Lucky him, he was quicker to get his changes in. He merged them faster than me. I, on the other hand, was too slow. So now one has become a diverging branch, right? I don't have changes that are in the main branch, so we have a divergence. But I still want my changes, maybe not that much, but a little bit. I do want these changes to be put back into main branch. Maybe I think I'm more right than Dylan. So I want to continue with my pull request and merge it in. So let's do that. You mind if I take over, Dylan?
Yep, no worries.
So now I'm going to go ahead back to my pull request. Look, Dylan says that I shouldn't merge it in. He said he wants some changes, but what does he know? So I'm going to merge it in anyway. What? What? There's a problem. There's a conflicting file. Why do you guys think there's a conflicting file? What do you think that means? Well, let's think back. Dylan changed the same file that I changed, right? And he's already put his stuff in there. And so now my changes to main would be overriding, and it's a clash. It doesn't know who's right. Because the source commit that me and Dylan had didn't have our change. And so I don't have Dylan's changes in my branch yet. I haven't pulled them in. And so there's this clash, and Git doesn't know who's right. So instead, we get this problem called a merge conflict, okay? And now I'm going to show you how to deal with that. So we're trying to merge from my branch to main. So to fix this merge conflict, we're actually going to pull main into my branch. Okay? Everyone making sense so far? Okay. So I'm going to do git pull. In this case, if I just did git pull on its own, and this is where the specificity matters, it would pull down every branch, but it's not merging Dylan's changes into my branch because my local branch, the one that I'm working with, it's featured how to run, and it's tracking this one. And I don't want to pull the upstream version, or sorry, the origin version of my branch. I want to get main. So I have to specify that I want to pull origin main. Maybe that went over your head a little bit, but it's just the reason why we like to be specific when we do this pulling and pushing. So we want to specifically pull from origin main. Okay, let's try. Conflict. Now we expected this, we knew there was going to be a conflict, and so we now need to deal with it ourselves. And there's a lot of approaches to this and a lot of tools. I'm going to use probably the tool I find. Do you want to use VS Code?
We'll do VS Code. Why don't we do both if we've got the battery?
We don't have the battery.
Okay, we're going to...
So I'm going to go into VS Code. Okay, so when you do the pull, now we can open VS Code. Oops, that's not the right way to open it. And it's immediately popped up because it knows that we've got a problem, right? So let's go and resolve this merge in the top. I think if you don't get that, you can click on the Git tab that I already shown you before a little bit a while ago, and we can click on our merge changes. And we want to get into this merge editor. Okay, so let's start looking at this and understanding what the heck is going on, because there's a lot going on, right? We have incoming changes and we have current changes. What do you guys think incoming means here? What do you think current means?
Incoming changes from the origin main.
That's exactly right. So our local branch, Git says that's our current stuff. Makes sense, that's what currently is on our local stuff. And incoming, well, we've just tried to merge origin main into our local branch. So that's what it's referring to. So we have changes that are in origin main that aren't in our local branch. So those are incoming. And we have changes that are in our current branch that clash with those incoming things. And so in particular, we can look, right? What change here is clashed? Well, Dylan changed SyncHack to be all lowercase. I changed SyncHack, had a space in it. Which one's right? Well, I'm actually right. And then the second one is we both made these new sections, right? And which one of these should be added? Great. Let's get me on. So we've got to actually choose these, right? And so which one do we want to accept? Well, it's not that easy. Like I can click accept current and it looks fine, but actually I want half of my changes and I want half of Dylan's, because really at its core, I'm right, this is how 6hack is actually spelt. But Dylan's right, this is a way better section than my section. And if I was using a tool that I knew how to use a bit better, I would do it correctly, but you can just literally go in here and convert it. Yeah. So what we've got here, we've got incoming on the top left, current in the top right, and what we are saying that the final change will look like. Okay? We do this per file. Most of the time Git is really smart and it will automatically figure out what the change should be. But because we changed the exact same thing, it can't say who is right. And sometimes even with the same file, it's smart enough to combine things. Okay, so this is quite a specific scenario. In this case, I've taken half of my changes, half of Dylan's changes, and at the end, I'm happy with the file looking like this. Are you guys happy? Does it make sense? Please ask. I want you to be comfortable merging your own stuff. This is a really good skill to have. There's nothing worse than having an intern come in and they don't know how to merge their changes. So this is like a prerequisite for being a developer. Cool. So we're going to say that's a success. Complete that merge. And now, let's go back to the command line. If I go to git status, it'll say there's something that needs to be committed. And why is that? Because we have, in essence, made a change by merging stuff, right? So we have to make another commit. And the way that merging works is that it automatically staged it. So you can see, because it's green, it's already been added, right? So we just have to do the git commit. And another fun thing, with merging it's simple, we don't actually have to write a message. Git knows that this is a merge, and so it knows what the message should be. So we can literally just type git commit. It'll pop up, here's the message, right? Big long message, but it's actually got all the information we need, and we're happy with it, right? We don't need to change it. So we accept that change. And now if I open up my git log, what do we notice? Well, there's a lot of things here. First of all, let's start from the bottom. Let's just go back through our history a little bit. We have that initial commit. It's a bit funny actually. So I'm surprised that initial commit is above how to read. Anyways, we have our how to readme. Then we have the added the space. I did that without you guys knowing. And then here, what's interesting is we've got that main branch, right? So we have Dylan making the change. He modified his readme. Do you remember that? And then he added the usage information, and he merged his branch, right? If I'm looking here, he merged feature/usage into main. So that merge commit is in our log. And then I merged main into my local branch. So that's what this final one is. And in a second we'll show you the graph. But just understand you can go through these git logs and understand what's changed. Okay. Now I've made that change. Oh god. My computer just okay. I'll be just plug it in 1 second.